it's crazy, but it's
You're watching Channel Z, the world's leading zombie apocalypse channel, broadcasting live from Studio Z.
Makes me act the way I do.
Welcome to Undead Live, reporting from the front lines of the zombie apocalypse. We've got you back covered morning, noon, and night, whether you're dead, undead, recently deceased, or still kicking. We have got this apocalypse covered. I'm Erica O'Neill, and with me today is Liz Grumbach.
Hi, I'm Liz Grumbach. Erica, it's so good to see you. How's your apocalypse?
Oh, my apocalypse is just humming along.
Yeah, same. Yeah, humming along. I don't know about you, and I have to say that I'm so excited it's Aries season because I really feel like that's the energy we need to take into this conversation about AI and Chat GPT. And I think we were thinking of this as kind of a rant or a venting session. Is that right, Erica?
It is a little bit of that, but we have some applications where AI could be a positive impact on the world that we'll discuss about too. It's not all problematizing either. We're trying to figure out some solutions and we're offering some to the audience as well.
I'm so excited that you're here to be positive. I'll try to also be positive, but maybe I'm the negative and you're the positive. We'll figure it out.
I'm here to activate the energy that you are bringing to this rant and to try to get people out there to actually resist and reform these technologies.
I love this. So I would love to ask the audience to start off. So when you think of AI, and please drop in the comments and let us know. If you're watching this after the live show, put it in the comments of the YouTube video and we'll see it afterwards. But what do you think of when you think of AI? Do you think of something that's going on right now in real life? Do you think of portrayal of it in media? We'd love to know. So pop that into the chat. But Erica, where should we start?
I think that we should start with maybe one of the reasons why it seems like AI is everywhere right now. And so if you can you can pull that graphic up. I think you'll see a nice trajectory of how much we're spending in the private industry around this in the past 5 to 8 years. And that upward curve, it is this huge growth.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And I think, one of the things that I have felt, and I think a lot of folks have felt, is this growing excitement, but also growing dread, right? And we can see here in this chart that growing excitement / dread. Just from 2014 to 2021, which seems like a long time, but isn't really a long time in kind of tech development terms, right, Erica?
Yeah, it's not at all. And then you also have this, a gigantic increase in the years that aren't reported on here, more recently. Yeah. And that aligns really clearly with the type of forward-facing models that are being released to demonstrate how this technology works, because people are actually getting to conceptualize what AI is based off of what they can do with it, with their computers, with all these open tools.
Yeah, as Dave is saying, when he asks OpenAI to write stories, everyone has boring American names. That's so true. And that's based on the data, right? That's behind these platforms and technologies that people can now directly experiment with.
Yeah, and I think Dave is referring to ChatGPT-3, which was the model that was released by OpenAI that allowed users to help train that data set by creating prompts for it, and then it would spit things out in response.
So I have a question for you, and maybe we can bring something up in a moment, but why, so AI is everywhere. Why are you and I concerned about it, right? I think there's something happening in these companies that is making me a little concerned. What about you?
Yeah, just a little concerned. If Microsoft laying off their entire AI ethics and society team is cause for concern, then I've got it. This isn't the first time that huge players in this space have done that. You have the really dramatic kind of layoff of Timnit Gebru from Google in 2020 for questioning some of the ethical decisions that were being made, or maybe not even questioning, just bringing to light what wasn't previously out in the public sphere about this stuff. But this AI ethics and society team is interesting because they still have the Office of Responsible AI, but that is at the highest level of the company where they're trying to interpret anything regulatory and how it would impact this company. This office that was focused just on ethics and society, in that AI division, translated for the Office of Responsible AI and the people who are actually developing the technology. And that's the level of translation that you need, because you need to make the folks who are using and doing this technical and like ethical experts in what they're creating.
Absolutely. And you also need them to advise on things like, when should we make the data open? So one of the other things that came out when this layoff happened was that the next version of GPT, they will not be releasing the data that they're running this model on at all. So we're not going to be able to know what is behind this platform that we're all using, or this program that we're all using, or whatever Microsoft builds next. And Pam, thank you so much for bringing this up, like losing their jobs to AI. We're going to maybe cover that in a minute as well. But we had so many amazing comments that were like, well, I think of Hal, right? Athena, I think, thinks of Hal when she thinks of AI, which is from, oh my gosh, how am I forgetting the name of that movie? Erica, Hal, the computer.
Oh, 2000s, Space
Yeah.
Odyssey 2000. What was it?
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know.
Yeah, well,
We're millennials. We're sorry. We think these
millennials.
things that are like,
Tina.
it's the exact same sort of science fiction trope that's repeated over and over, where you have this singularity, super intelligence type computer, doesn't want to be turned off, decides that it can have values and sort of ideas and action and authority on its own. And so that's way back then, and it's still being replicated in science fiction circles now, which is kind of odd, because singularity is one of the least concerning issues around AI that I have personally. What about you, Liz?
Absolutely same. So I have always thought of, well, there's these sci-fi depictions of artificial intelligence that really serve as warnings for us and are not really reality or reality yet. If we're being like super negative, maybe a singularity will happen and we'll all have evil AI robot overlords, right? But that is not in the future. That's not one of the things we're mainly concerned about. So maybe we should roll it back and talk about, like, what do we actually mean when we talk about AI? What is AI now as compared to, the future? And there is an amazing comment here from Dave. Erica is worried, Dr. O'Neill is worried about AI because she believes it has the potential to cause a great deal of harm if it is not developed and deployed responsibly. Absolutely, exactly, right? Thank you,
Yeah.
Dave. I think, so what do you think, or how do you define AI, Erica?
So I will skirt that question right now, because we have a beautiful graphic that'll help get to that in a moment. And I will say that AI, as it is currently conceived in like just the vernacular, you and I are talking about it and everyone else is talking about it, has become just this catch-all umbrella for any sort of computational big data, algorithmically driven solutions. And so it used to just be under this umbrella of machine learning, but now it's become even more specialized as like an artificial intelligence umbrella, where, because I don't know if written into that is the idea that this machine learning is going to become artificially intelligence, and that's sort of the end goal of it. But it's really been rebranded just in the past few years. I don't know how you feel about that.
I feel exactly the same. I mean, I remember 10 years ago when I was working on machine learning for historical documents, we were not thinking of AI in the way it is currently being defined. We were thinking of it as computational solutions to find patterns in massive amounts of documents. And now it's really, I think, in the public, being thought of as only generative AI, which is Dave is having an experiment in the comments. Thank you, Dave, for running this alongside. This is amazing and also terrifying. I think that now generative AI is being thought of as everything that AI is, and that's not all that AI can do, right? It can find patterns for us to then investigate further, but yeah, that's it. I'm angry, Erica. Have you been angry?
I am disappointed. I'm going to pull out that teacher trope. I'm disappointed because, as you mentioned, it could be something that is used in conjunction with human intelligence in order to broaden what we're exploring or supplement the type of questions that we're asking to see these gaps. But instead, all of this focus is on a generative model of AI. in which it's sort of creating things from seemingly nowhere. And it's not. It's got this huge model of data that it's being trained on. But I love that you have this wonderful way of conceptualizing it called salami as shorthand. Do you want to pull that up really quick?
Let's talk about salami.
Yeah, because it's only AI in the sense that we think of it now because we have a user interface. Like it's something that we can then see in the world and kind of push and prod and modify in different ways. So talk about salami here, Liz.
All right, so SALAMI stands for Systematic Approaches to Learning Algorithms and Machine Inferences, which is honestly a really great way to define and think about what AI does. Now, the reason why the scholars that are shown here on the screen want to call it SALAMI and not AI is because of the things that Emily Bender has here and that the original author also has in their blog. Will salami have emotions instead of will AI have emotions? Can salami acquire a personality similar to humans instead of can AI acquire a personality similar to humans? Because it makes us think like, oh, well, if I'm asking this about AI, it's exactly the same as asking you about the inanimate object that is salami, right? So these questions are actually not the interesting questions for our, our society and for the furthering of what AI can do for us in a good way, right? They're distracting. And I love Athena's question here, what would the vegan version of salami look like? Because that is actually a question that these two scholars have been talking about. Maybe it's, I don't know, can salami be made from soy? What do you think, Erica?
I think that there's a lot of harm reduction models that could be built into salami, which would align with different vegan ideals if you want to take that metaphor a little further.
My goodness, I love it. But yeah, what Emily says here, the renaming makes the absolute ridiculousness of these questions really clear, because these questions are actually kind of based in sci-fi, right? They're based in warning signs more than they're based in reality. Does that sound right?
It does, because it's only through this user interface that we get this personification happening where you're seeing this as something that's human-like because it's been trained to be human-like, because it's been trained completely on a human data set and is a supervised learning environment where humans then take these inputs and decide where they go, because this is not something that's operating solo. Like a lot of these are reinforced supervised learning models where you have this incredible amount of ghost work that is happening in the back. So I don't know if you want to speak to that real quick, Liz.
Yeah,
let's speak about labor. I'm going to hand the microphone off to you because I know that is.
Let's talk about labor and ghost work for sure. I also want to say, let's bring this comment from Elizabeth Langland and Rosemary Garland Thompson back up, maybe in a moment, because I think effective altruism is something we should end on in this conversation, if that sounds good to you, Erica. I want to talk first about what is behind ChatGPT. So what is behind ChatGPT is actually something called a large language model. And for me, the way that I understand large language models is it is a program that has been trained on a massive amount of text, and then computer language is run on that massive amount of text to predict the next words in a sentence and mimic human language. That computer does not understand anything. That computer does not contain any knowledge. That is all personifications of computer language that are not super helpful right now. Maybe if you're writing a sci-fi novel, yes, but not kind of super helpful for our understanding of these things. And that can be done to do really, really cool work. And I have, used large language models in the past to understand patterns across history. And there are companies that 10 years ago were interested in, understanding patterns across history. But ChatGPT and other programs like it are generative AI, as I mentioned earlier. So AI that uses this existing content to generate new content that is a mimicking of human language or human history or human literature. Now, what's behind that large language model is actually a lot of labor that we're not seeing, labor of real humans that are working on the data. It's not just the computer and the programmer, it's also humans that are being paid sometimes really low wages to clean up the data behind it. And I wonder, Erica, if you wanted to talk a little bit about, I mean, what that data looks like, why it's not the best data set behind ChatGPT.
Yeah, so we were just in a half-day workshop for Stochastic Parrots Day, which will soon be on YouTube. If anyone is interested in listening to Timnit Gebru and a bunch of other experts in this area who wrote that paper and are trying to interpret kind of the significance of it several years down the road, that will soon be posted. So just go look up machine learning parrot and it'll pop
We'll
up.
put it in the comments of the YouTube video too after we're done live.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But they had on there someone who is one of these really low paid workers in Kenya who was a team lead for a bunch of folks who are getting paid $2 an hour to kind of filter out the toxicity or make sense of what counts as an in-group or an out-group around things that are incredibly obscene, very sexualized, just the worst excesses of the Western world in written form. So this isn't even like content moderators in a Facebook space, which are looking at sort of these visual things that are being uploaded by people. This is taking these snippets from text and asking them to categorize it into a certain field so that it could either include or exclude things that are around that realm, because they're trying to put some sort of guardrail on ChatGPT. And you see people trying to break those guardrails down in real time as they're interacting with the software to show what the potential is when you kind of can work around what's already been kind of created by these workers. But it's just long hours of reading terrible things all day long for very minimal reward, and then having to take home all of that trauma to the people that you live with and the communities that you're embedded in, and really having no way to escalate that sort of labor and the unfair imbalance between the amount of money that's being profited on in the private sector and how little these folks who are actually doing the work to make sense of that huge data set and train these algorithms are up to in the background. So it's it's a predictable kind of way that this works when you seed something like the development of this large language model to a private market-driven company. It is not care or justice-based, which Liz and I always advocate for. And we would love to imagine AI in a world that is more sort of care and justice-oriented.
Mm-hmm. So as we transition to that, I think that maybe we could talk about a little bit about what are all the things that large language models power, because it's not only ChatGPT, it's also things like your Alexa device, Siri on your phone, your Google Home. And I think that this question from Athena is actually perfect. What motivated companies to start using this technology? What do you think motivated companies, Erica?
Well, to answer Athena's question, they released it so that you can all train it for them. Because that is ideally what they're trying to do, is generate these prompts and then have you continue to interact with the same prompt. That's the model in which it was released. Some people are using it as a one-off, like, write me a soup recipe, tomato soup recipe, and it'll do that for you. But ideally, they want you to have a back and forth exchange with this model so that you can continue to train it through the inputs and the outputs that you're getting.
Mm-hmm. And we can see the kind of rapid release of ChatGPT and models like it to power things like Microsoft products, Bing, OpenAI, etc. So just from 2021, when GPT-3, so before ChatGPT was released, we can see all of these companies really very quickly releasing and developing things and training it on the folks that are using it. So it's almost like, I think maybe we're giving them free labor. Is that right, Erica?
Yes, we are interacting with these devices all the time in order to refine the way that it's technically operating in the world. And from that graphic, there's one on there, Bloom, which has a more open sort of understanding of the data set. It's not a black box. So if you're interested in like a more ethical approach to trying to do a large language model like this, and kind of training that and getting feedback from it, Bloom would be one that you could investigate, see how they're doing different.
Thank you for recommending that. I also need to experiment with Bloom. Maybe we can do that together. All right. So I think that one of the things that we could continue to talk about are the other places that large language models and also just general artificial intelligence, as we're kind of defining it in this conversation, power. And it powers things like, I think the way you put it was private solutions to public problems, right? So what is within private solutions to public problems for you, Erica?
Well, when you have a society that has devalued public labor, and I'm talking about any sort of like government, the big government version of labor, you need people to run these sorts of social welfare programs. You need people to do the sorts of things and mechanics that keep society running. When you devalue that, you fire that, you cut the funding for that. You end up needing to supplement it with contractors who come in to provide those private solutions to the public problems that you have. So if you have a public problem where you need quicker and more efficient guidelines to who is going to post bail, you turn to an algorithm developed by a private company who doesn't share their data and training set to figure that out. And it turns out that that data and training set generates really racist problems that just perpetuate the systemic inequities that are surrounding that because it's being trained on historical data. And if all of the historical data was inherently racist in the way that they approach that, you're going to get that same like power replicated by the algorithm. Like it shouldn't be something that's surprising, but it continues to be surprising. It seems like the way that people are interacting with this and kind of rolling this out as a private solution to these public problems, where instead of investing in the sort of architecture that you need as a public administrator, you are outsourcing that labor to problematic private companies to come up with solutions.
Absolutely. And as Athena says, it's garbage in, garbage out with some of this data. And it has real world impacts and negative effects on folks' lives. And we see that, we're now seeing that in the justice system. We're seeing it in the healthcare system. We're seeing it in, a number of other industries. So I think we could come up with a lot of examples. If anyone's interested in investigating this more, take a look at what Tampa PD is doing with surveillance and computer vision, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Athena says, what kind of garbage is going into large language models? And we, I think, could very quickly say something about ChatGPT, right, Erica? The kinds of data that has gone into ChatGPT and what kind of garbage it is. What do you think?
If you're training an algorithm on everything that is publicly available on the internet writ large, you are getting the good, the bad, and the very, very ugly, because people act different in anonymized spaces like that than they do in public spheres. And so if that's what you're training your algorithm on, then what gets perpetuated is like a degree of ugliness and hostility that maybe doesn't exist as blatantly out in the public sphere. But it's something that you're training this on. And it's really, that's the garbage in and garbage out that you get.
I think that's exactly it. And we, alluded to it a little bit when we were talking about labor, the labor of folks across the world in cleaning up these data sets and the trauma that they go through kind of looking at the really ugly garbage and trying to weed it out, and think about all of the garbage that makes it in. And yeah.
If you're looking at something like ChatGPT 3 as well, it's really situated in modern data sets. So it's also erasing this huge historical like corpus of texts and literature and human understanding and value that we have kind of created over time up until this point. It's not historically, socially, or culturally contextual. It's just like this moment in time.
So I'm going to go on my rant before we move on, just a little bit about what is the digital dark age. So there was this European Commission report in, I believe, 2011, but someone correct me in the comments if this isn't right, that basically said, if we do not take care to digitize the text, so make all of these documents that we have text that can feed computer problems and be analyzed by computer language, then we're going to enter into a digital dark age in which the history of our world is not properly represented by these computers. And what it feels like to me, and I think a lot of researchers, is that we are now in a digital dark age because these platforms like ChatGPT and companies like Microsoft and OpenAI, and Microsoft are not thinking about the historical record. They're only thinking about the modern age. And if we do not think about the historical record and representing everyone in that historical record, we lose so much potential for what these programs can actually do. And Erica, I think like this is where we could talk a little bit about what could AI do for us? Like, what is the potential that AI does give us that maybe just isn't being fulfilled yet?
Yeah, I mean, it has the ability to be transformative in the way that it can collate, aggregate, and then make sense of these huge data sets out in the world. So it really could tackle some of these massive social problems if you were to structure it in a way that like historically and socially makes sense of what's out there in the world and then processes it to give you outputs. But that's not something that's currently happening right now.
It's
And
not.
so we all need to be the voices of that, and the resistance for that is it's you are interacting with it every day. You're interacting with Alexa, you're interacting with Siri. Everything on your phone has some sort of algorithmic component to it, whether or not it's in that huge sort of data training model or not. It's still something where you have the power to kind of push things in a way that you would prefer to interact with them. So you have the ability to understand this and then advocate for those out there who are in poorer working conditions or just think that this sort of unchecked rollout is inevitable, because it's not. It doesn't have to be.
It's not, it doesn't have to be. And I know we had a few things that I'll just pop up here that were possibly resources for folks that were thinking about the AI apocalypse. So one of them is by David Chapman. He self kind of published online the Better Without AI book that he wrote. So these are practical actions that you can take against AI risks, and he defines those risks. And if anyone's interested in this, you know, Googling Better Without AI will immediately pop these up. And some of the things he says in this, right, is that like there are these extreme scenarios that we've talked about a little bit here, like what I call the sci-fi scenario, that's a warning. But there are also these really rooted in your everyday interactions risks that you can take against AI. And I know, Erica, that there are a couple of other resources that we wanted to share. So maybe we can pop into the comments. Dave, thanks so much. The AI is telling us that we're not living in a digital dark age. I don't think I trust the AI. What about you?
I think the AI is living in the here and now, and its response really reflects what the weight of history it's putting on that answer.
Absolutely. So I know that
one more resource before we get past that is Dan McQuillan's Resisting AI, an Anti-Fascist Approach to Artificial Intelligence. It's a wonderful book. It has all sorts of examples and ways that you can activate this sort of resistance in your own life and really query how the power structures and inequalities that are like pervasive in our society right now are being replicated in these technological spaces, and how you can push back against that and resist that and create a sort of environment that doesn't just cede control to private entities to like put those guardrails up and self-regulate, because they're doing it very poorly, as you saw at the beginning of our half hour here, where they have just fired so many folks who are trying to do well in the world.
And I love the Resisting AI, go read it, experience it. It's great. And what I love about it too is that the anti-fascist approach implies that we are learning from history, the very history that's kind of being erased by these AI systems that we're interacting with on a daily basis. So I think I saw a comment from Emily that basically said we need a humanities approach. We need a humanities perspective in these rooms. And that is something that I truly believe that we definitely need. And it's also something that the place where we work, the Lincoln Center for Applied Ethics at Arizona State University, just a little, a little reminder, we tackle those kinds of problems.
Yeah, and I will be teaching an introductory class to the human impacts of AI fall 2023 if you're interested.
If you're interested.
Community oriented.
So we are, I desperately want to answer this question from Crystal Jensen. A common ethical problem discussed is the trolley problem. How would an AI solve this problem? And do you agree? I think an AI would solve this problem based on the data that it's being fed. So it depends on who is being represented in the data being fed into that AI. What do you think, Erica?
And AI is already solving this problem with self-driving cars, and it's not doing it very well if you consider the number of accidents, deaths, and other injuries that are involved in training actively that data set, especially here in Arizona, where we have really lax regulatory laws, and we have all sorts of self-driving vehicles being trained on the streets around us.
And we did, I mean, just to locate it really locally in Tempe, Arizona, that is where the first death from a self-driving car happened. So that's a really local history for us, and we feel it really deeply here in Phoenix and Tempe.
Someone was crossing, just jaywalking, and it didn't see them as a human in the world.
Mm-hmm. So thank you for that question, Crystal. It's very, very important. We were going to return to effective altruism. And I think what I will end with is saying we need to consider both the criticisms of effective altruism and the definition of it as well. So I think that effective altruism is can be really individualistic if you live it in your daily life, or if you train a computer language system to think of it in that way. Erica, do you have any feedback? Because I know this is going to transition into what we can do to fight the AI apocalypse, and I think it's very related.
So AI is one of the huge problems that effective altruist spaces are trying to combat. They're encouraging folks to do jobs that have meaning to them. If you're interested in getting involved in this space and making that sort of your profession, I would encourage you to do so. If all you can give is money, I would encourage you to do so. But just know that the people and the folks who are here on the ground right now are just as important as those who are unborn in the future. And that if you are also distributing your funds towards those future populations, think of how you can also enact change more locally. Through different sorts of mutual aid programs or sort of care-based models that don't have this top-down hierarchy of what should be important. And you can actually sort of situate that power in the group and the community around you as well. So it doesn't have to be an either or. It can be a plus and it's really personal for how you'd like to do well in the world and enact that change.
That is perfect. Do well in the world, enact that change, look at your local communities. And I think, the big, one of the things that was said in that Stochastic Parrots event that we went to together last week, Erica, was that it's really important that we educate ourselves in what AI truly is, how it works, and how it could potentially impact our lives in the future. I think that, it can be overwhelming to think, oh, I can't learn how AI works. I can't learn machine learning, but actually it's not that hard, especially in the way that it's being employed now. I think the sci-fi version of AI intimidates us, and that is not what AI really is right now. And hopefully will never be. I don't know, Erica, what do you think?
Hopefully not. My favorite takeaway was that when you're designing solutions to problems, you should involve the communities who are impacted by those, because most of these algorithmic solutions are being generated as here's a product for instead of with you. So I would also encourage any of you to go be that with in the world, like advocate for real change that helps you and the communities that you are part of. And that can start local, can go global. Just be the first voice.
Mm-hmm. Be the first voice. Well, thank you, Erica, for this conversation. I think that's a perfect way to end.
Yes, and thank you all so much for joining us for this edition of Undead Live on Channel Z, where we have the apocalypse covered. See you next week with Dr. Z as he talks about post-viral hysteria. And remember, the best way to protect your brains in the zombie apocalypse is to share them. Thanks for tuning in.
And if the whole world says that